Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we decided to stop by at somebody I've known for many years, Mike at Stanceworks, at his shop, and we're kind of stopped by to see what Mike's working on. And I brought the M2 for him to give his kind of 2 cents on. I mean, how long have we known each other, Mike? Like,
I don't know, probably at this point close to a decade, if I had to guess.
I think so.
Give or take.
Yeah, and I think you and I have a similar taste in...
For the most part.
For the most part. We'll say that. in BMWs, because a lot of the things that you guys see kind of here is the same thing you'll see in my personal garage and kind of the parts we trade, right? On
all sorts of stuff.
Cars, and especially E28. So we always had that connection, and we have friends that have done this with Ray and everyone else that just ties everyone together kind of a neat way.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of one of those, like, it's a small world type of scenarios where it's like, I feel like everybody knows you, you know everybody, so it's unsurprising that our paths would have crossed when they did, and it's cool that it's been that long already.
And it was a long time, and I really wanted the original truck you built. That was kind of my first reach out. I don't remember even when that was, but I really wanted that truck, and at the time I was building my shop, and I kind of made the choice not to end up buying it, which you sent it, it's in Belgium, right? It's
in Belgium. I got the opportunity to buy that truck back. So for anybody that doesn't know, it's a 28 Model A with a BMW M60 V8 in it. The guy who owns it, still owns it, the guy that bought it from me, offered to sell it back to me for the same price he bought it for, which is pretty crazy because...
That is crazy. You know. So is it on the boat?
It's not. I've been struggling with whether or not, like, how badly do I want it back? I would love to own it again, but then there's that kind of, is this just nostalgia talking to me? Am I going to spend this money, get it back here, and be like, what do I do with this? Or is it going to be as good as I remember it being?
I wanted that truck, and then of course you had the Stanceworks kind of forum in its day, which many people weren't doing at the time. And then now you kind of do YouTube full time, I would say, right? Like that's
something like that, yeah.
What you're doing, but you also build a ton of stuff on camera and off, and I was going to have you kind of walk us around and let us know what you're working on and kind of show us the shop, I guess.
It's if I had planned better, I would clean up. It's a mess. I would say, oh, it's not normally like this, but it's always a mess.
But some people have to work for a living, so.
Something like that. So yeah, we've got all sorts of projects. Obviously, you're familiar with the S54 E36. Yeah. In the back, I've got the 31 Model A that is in a bunch of pieces, hopefully back together here in the next few weeks. Sweet. And then off to the auction block, my newest acquisition, an E28 that's kind of hopefully a forever car. I know we both love these cars a lot, and so it's kind of an opportunity to buy what seems like as close to perfect as I'm going to get, and considering I'm not going to get a Euro M5 anytime soon, I don't have that kind of bankroll, this is as close as I'm going to get.
So it's white with the Nutri interior, which is like the brown interior.
Yeah.
Which like I would say is the rare, I think it's one of the rarest
interiors.
As
far as I know, so there's 2 interior colors. There's like a Nutria, which is kind of a brown with a hint of green to it, and then I don't know what the other name is, but there's a green with a hint of brown to it. And
I don't know
those
the other name either, yeah.
Really rare. And so when I saw inside this car and found out it was a real white over Nutria car, it's a 535, and it has been meticulously cared for and has a mountain of money thrown into it by the previous owner. It was like, okay, that's it, I gotta have it. They did the full Euro conversion the right way. It's got the full Euro tail panel grafted onto it.
Wow.
The front panel grafted onto it, so we don't have all the little holes. I mean, they went through and actually wired up all the lights so it doesn't have, fast blinking turn signals, which you get on pretty much every Euro conversion. And so that'll be a Euro M5 eventually, kind of once I get there. The E30 is kind of on the short list of projects. That's going to be full S52 swapped. I've got some 4-lug Alpina splits to go on it. Just going to try to make a really nice, simple, awesome driver's car. We're going to drive it on the Overcrest Rally in October. Should be a bunch of fun.
That's the preach that I always say. S52 for E30, S54 for E36, which randomly, not so randomly, brings us back to this.
So it's granite silver metallic, which is the original color of the car. It's as far as I know, it's a 93, 94, or 92, 93 only base model color. It is a non-M. It was one of my first BMWs that I got. I got it while I was in high school. I managed to get this after my first E30, bought it, fixed it up. First day I drove it to school, a kid rear-ended it in his dad's car because he had wrecked his car the day before. So he was having a bad week. Totaled my E30, went and got this thing. I've had it since. So approaching 18 years now. Been through a lot with it, and it's one of those cars I wish I did more with it. I wish I drove it more than I do. I think any of us with like a bunch of project cars have cars that kind of fall into that.
But this has always been in the background every time I come by,
Yeah,
everything you've done, I always see it or say something about it. Other than, we'll pop the hood in a minute on the S54, but what else is done to the car? So these are some classic HREs.
Yep, so I found a set of HRE 525s, which to me are like a perfect period correct split wheel. I mean, I'm a fan of splits over monoblock wheels, especially in this era. And when I came across them, I mean, they were factory 17 by 9.5 ET35, which is like perfect E36 spec. So I had to buy those. And then, yes, since I've had the car, pretty much everything's been replaced. A few years ago, we did a full glass out paint job at Axis Paintworks, you know, full factory respray, still the same color. And then while I was at it, I replaced every single piece of rubber and trim on the car. I really wanted to give myself like the perfect E36, and that kind of makes it rear its ugly head of like brand new trim pieces from BMW don't match each other anymore and all that kind of stuff. All this stuff's getting old. It's kind of a bummer, but
it's like an onion project. I mean, I bought that wagon. I found my ultimate wagon, which was that Techno Violet 97 M Sport everything 328 I got from Holland, and I've started to get all the pieces, and then I realized like new versus original with back to black doesn't match. Slowly piecing that together, and we're going to build that car. But you have the Brid M Rain, right?
Everything on. I've tried to go through and do everything on the car. I did buy an authentic one of the 125 M-Tech Rain interiors to start with, even though I redid it. For me, it was like knowing that it was the real thing to start with versus just kind of faking it. So it's got a full M-Rain interior. I have the original seats up top, but I really wanted some Brid Zeta 2s. Just, I think, one of the coolest shaped headrests on a seat that just kind of like straight up square look. Fits the car, which is just super hard edged. I thought it would be sweet, so have that for the inside, and all that's left inside the car is a little bit of cleanup, and then I have a brand new factory slick top headliner, thanks to my buddy John. He found that for me because this car is a slick top conversion, so it was originally a sunroof car. So I'll get that and new pillars in. Interior will be done. All the underpinnings on the car are pretty much done at this point. We pulled all the rear suspension out, powder coated the subframes. I replaced every single nut and bolt, every component, every bushing, bearing, blah, 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 blah. And
so
really,
what suspension? This has coilovers on it?
Yeah, so this has H&R coilovers on it at the moment. Everything else is all just really aimed at putting the best of the best that I can put on it with respect to retaining a street car, right? I didn't want it to be a track car. It's not, you know, solid bushings and solid mounts. So I went with like spherical bearings from BMW, from some of the other cars. You can kind of retrofit them into the control arms and whatnot. I kept rubber where it made sense to keep it. Some stuff is poly. Really just trying to make a new E36 again and just chipping away at it. And so really all that's left on my to-do list, aside from like some of the small details and cleaning up the inside, is I'm gonna put a new steering rack in it. I've got to powder coat the front subframe and do power steering lines. Powder coat, if I really care about it, I need to powder coat the front knuckles because those are the only part of the suspension that's not like new.
It's cool, the early E36s have the manual AC, you know, the non-digital like AC. It's got some really early stuff, which is actually really cool because it's more analog, which is neat for this car. To me, an S54 well-sorted E36 is pretty much top of the top for BMW as far as engine swaps go. Just from a driving standpoint, car is super quick. It handles its all-NA power. This is like best of the best you can get from a standpoint of what BMW has to offer in the cars that we love.
Absolutely. It's kind of the best of that NA generation. And what's kind of fun is, so when I started this S54 swap, it's kind of what put me on the map in the BMW world because it was one of the first S54 swaps anyone was doing. To be totally honest, that came from a place of naivety where I didn't know that you couldn't do that. And so when I first posted up on the BMW forums and said, yeah, I bought this, you know, whole E46 M3 driveline and I'm putting it in my 325, and everybody was like, yeah, you're an idiot, that's not gonna work, et cetera, et cetera. And in some sense, they were right. I didn't know what I was doing, and I really wound up, in some ways, getting lucky and just wound up partnering with some of the right people that helped see it through to the finish line. And so yeah, that brought this car to being, as far as I know, the first E46 M3 swap versus a Z3 M swap. So this car underneath thinks it's an M3. It still has, I mean, it's got a factory E46 computer in it. It's got the E46 cluster, E46 lighting control module, the E46 column, along with, it still has EWS3 in it. Like, it's not flashed out. It is, you can plug it into like a BMW GT1 head and it passes all the tests. It just thinks it's,
so you retain all the modules, and that's something you do when you have a full donor. Some of the builds that we do now, like some of the cars we do, that's why we have donor cars, because when you don't have all the technology to get rid of an EWS or get rid of and code out modules. You don't code them out. You install them. And then you have an E46 and E36 clothing, so to speak, to make this all work and run. It's a period kind of S54 build.
Yeah, it's one of the early ones. I know Rob Levinson from UUC, he was really early in finishing his car with a Z3 M swap, and we were kind of giving each other hell back and forth on the forums about who could get done first, and we were trading some info about, what parts and pieces can you use to make the swap work, finding out that you could bolt this 6-speed transmission into the car using the Euro 6-speed Evo transmission cross brace, and then like what drive shaft to pair with it. All that stuff that now is really common knowledge. Everybody kind of knows all the parts and pieces. And the fact that now you could just flash the computer and drop this engine in a matter of a long weekend.
Well, it's crazy because in 2002, when I did my S52 swap and my E30 M3, it was the same sort of world. There were other cars out there and people would literally sell a CD-ROM that I bought to use as the parts list and the directions to help me build that car. So let me pop the hood here.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So you just recently did this box, right?
Yep. So I recently did the box. Previously, for the longest amount of time, we were running an open velocity stack setup on it, which made a ton of power. So last time we dynoed the car, it was 327 at the wheels with stock internals. So all it has is basically that, the exhaust, and like pulleys and stuff. And so, it was a blast to drive, sounded amazing, but in an effort to say, hey, I really want to drive this car more often. What we were talking about earlier is, I want to put myself in the driver's seat of this car and be less hesitant to drive it. I should be pulling filtered air into the car. I should be responsible. Let's be an adult about it, especially since it feels like driving around here in Southern California, smoggy, dusty, gross, and every time I drive somewhere, I'm going to drive through a construction site on a freeway. So we got a new air box on it. I've fiddled with the idea of kind of doing some of the more standard NA bolt-ons like cams and what have you, but the car rips as it is. Why mess with it?
Sure.
It's been such a fun car over the past almost two decades. I should focus on driving it more than modifying it. That's not going to make me drive it.
Yeah, and it's nice to kind of compartmentalize and drive something you haven't and then make something a daily or plan to make it a daily. So I guess to segue, you made a video recently about the new BMWs.
I did.
Which a lot of people that follow the channel, we've had a combination of the older stuff, these included, and then our newer stuff, like the G80. I brought the M2 today to show you. There's comments about the car. It's like a love-hate type of a thing where the power is there, the thought is there, it's manual rear-wheel drive. We have the car outside, so we'll walk out and get some of Mike's comments on our M2 build. I really wanted to get the honest opinion from the BMW board member, Mike.
Yeah.
First of all, have you seen the new M2? Have you been around it?
All right, so this is first time seeing one in person. I've only been exposed to the internet, or if I have seen one in person previously, I did my best to forget it.
Okay.
No, it is definitely first opportunity to really walk around one. I find myself with mixed feelings about these cars because on one hand, I do think it's important to recognize that BMW is doing something that I can appreciate, which is this is a really high horsepower rear-wheel drive manual coupe that drives awesome. Like the driving experience here, I know it's great. BMW has been on a roll with their cars lately, especially everybody seems to absolutely love the way that the new M3 drives.
Yeah.
And the most common criticism is or most common kind of review is you can't see it from the driver's seat, drive it, and then form an opinion. My response to that is always kind of, well, life's too short to drive an ugly car. Now, that's subjective. I do want to, like I said, at least acknowledge I know that the car itself is great. I get so hung up, frankly, on the aesthetics of this car and most of BMW's current lineup. I just don't understand what they're doing. It's not a pretty car to me.
Yeah.
And again, everybody's got their opinion.
And that's sort of the roadblock. Because like to me, this is not a perfect looking car, but I always mod my cars.
Sure.
So when I look at something that's new, no matter if it's controversial or not, even stock E36s, I don't really always give them the full aesthetic judgment or my opinion because I know I'm gonna change the wheels. Like you and I love wheels. That's like our thing. It's definitely, you've had, I think, way more sets than me, but you can see a car and you're gonna change the wheels.
Absolutely.
You're gonna drop it. I know I'm gonna do a front lip. Kind of where we're at now is the modded M2, no wheel gap now. It has better wheel fitment, but even to some people, it's still outrageous. You brought up the boxes to me,
Yep.
which is 100% true.
So if you imagine that you had like a 3D model of the car and you had a slider and you could take it all the way down to like the bare minimum polygon count for this thing, each corner of the car would be represented by like a protruding cube. You have a square here, square shape, but it also comes out of the car, and it's at each corner of the car. It's like you have this normal car shape, and then at each corner of it you have like a pyrite cube growing out of it, and it's just leaves me scratching my head. That's probably the most egregious thing that I don't like about this car. And then like the borderless grills that kind of pop out, it looks like maybe it got stung by a bee to me. And again, I'm nitpicking. I think that the M2 CS, like the 2020 model, amazing looking car. I love that thing. I guess for me, I get hung up on the design language of those, and like the F30, my girlfriend drives an F31 wagon. I love the way those cars look. I really do. And then I see the latest one, and I'm scratching my head. It's so loud and kind of garish, and it's exemplified by the XM and the iX, where it's just, I can't figure out what BMW is doing. And I know that the answer is they're appealing to an international audience and chasing money because they're a business, and so I get that, and I can respect that side of it. I don't like it.
I want to thank Mike for letting me come by and bring this.
I thank you for coming by. Maybe not next time.
Okay, yeah, well, it's good to see you. We always try to get together. We talk a lot, but I'm never able to come by. So we had time. So thanks for making time for us, Mike. It's good to see you, man, and we'll be back. So we thank everybody for watching. We'll see you guys next time.